Hi y'all, it's Mike Peace. Welcome to my shop. And I'm doing a follow-up video on abrasive paste. I did a video some time back where I did a high-level review of the different abrasive pastes on the market. Things such as Glenn's Woodworks and something by Axe Paste and Yorkshire Grit and U-But-Triple-E, and even talked about my own concoction of abrasive paste. Did a video on how to make that. I'll have links to both those videos at the end of this video. I want to go into a little more depth. I bought a new toy. I bought a digital microscope that you can examine items from 50 magnification up to 500, and I thought that'd be real helpful in evaluating these different abrasive pastes in detail. And as I got started, my views changed a little bit. But here's the technique that I was using. And that's, I took 3 pieces of wood, as shown here, a piece of Bradford pear, a piece of cherry, and a piece of red oak, because I thought they'd be representative of the kind of wood that most of us be using for a lot of different projects. I sanded them initially with 150 grit after I turned them around. Used a skew to get as smooth a surface as I could. Used the 150 grit, and then I followed up with 220 grit. Several of the people that make or sell these abrasive pastes, they suggest that you can go up to no higher than 280 grit to use their product to get rid of minor scratches. So I thought I would stop at 220 because as a lower grit, I felt like I would be able to see scratches a little bit better, maybe even through the after the abrasive paste. I came up with some kind of interesting conclusions, but I want to show you a few of the samples that I've got here.
Here's a bit of 150 grit sandpaper magnified at 50 times, and the same piece of sandpaper magnified at 500 times. Here's a piece of 220 grit magnified at about 50x. It looks fairly fine, and then we magnify it again at about 500 and see a different view. Here's a piece of Bradford pear after I've been sanding it up to 220. Here's the same piece after it's been used abrasive paste. Here's a piece of cherry that's been sanded up to 220 grit, and then the same piece of cherry with abrasive paste. On the right hand side I've used sealer underneath it. Here's a piece of red oak sanded, and then again that same piece after I have had it using abrasive paste. Again, the right side of the ring I've used sanding sealer underneath it. Can't see much in the way of differences.
So let me share with you my understanding of this diatomaceous earth, and if somebody's got some more authoritative information, feel free to leave it in the links below, because I'm not saying I have the monopoly on truth. I'm just sharing with you what I've discovered. Again, all versions of these abrasive pastes, whether it's Glenn Woodworks or Axe or U-But-Triple-E or Yorkshire Grit or my homemade version, they're all going to contain a very, very fine pumice, as I mentioned. It comes from fossilized algae. They may contain some other larger grit pumices that break down with sanding, but they're all going to contain this diatomaceous earth. Let me talk briefly about this. I buy it as a mechanical insecticide, and it shows as the active ingredient here, diatomaceous earth, including silicon oxide, other oxides, and moisture 100%. And the diatomaceous earth is amorphous silica.
I took this picture of diatomaceous earth at a magnification of about 50. It's a little bit clumped. Here's a much more detailed view with a scanning electron microscope.
Basically, that very fine abrasive is that I use from diatomaceous earth that I got from Home Depot is going to be the very same product that's going to be in your red Triple-E abrasive that comes with your Beal buff system. So the Food Safe has less than 2% of the diatomaceous earth, and the rest of it is as I understand it, some version of limestone. And the difference in color is a function of where this Triple-E comes from. Limestone is usually white, but may be colored by impurities. Iron oxide making it brown, yellow, or red, and carbon making it blue, black, or gray. Where do you stop sanding? One of the advantages of using abrasive paste is you can speed your sanding finishing process up because you don't have to go as high as you might have been going before. I don't think it's necessary for domestic woods to sand up to 400 if you use abrasive paste. Depending on the hardness of the wood, you might be able to stop at 280. You might want to go to 320 if you've got very hard woods, woods that have a very fine cell structure. But if it's a coarser wood such as red oak or ash or catalpa or any number of woods that have a real prominent grain, I think you can stop at a lower grit such as 280 without any problem. And I don't think you're going to have scratches that are visible to the naked eye. There's always that question that keeps coming up, so listen carefully, is people are concerned about using abrasive paste because it has wax in it and it's going to interfere with their final finish. I have not found that to be the case as long as you use it properly. You clean it up, keep polishing with it and using a clean paper towel until there's nothing else showing up on that paper towel. If you're using finishes like I use, my favorite Minwax antique oil, the oil is going to be compatible with the wax. You're not going to have any problem, and that's going to be true of using tung oil finishes, antique oil finishes, regardless of the manufacturer, or Danish oil finishes. Those are all very compatible with wax, and you'd not have any problems, even if there was a tiny bit of wax on the surface. The one possibility is it might make the final finish coat a little bit softer with the wax in it, but I don't think that's going to be significant. I don't think it's going to be a problem with using urethane finishes or polyurethane because got to turn my phone off. I haven't found it to be an issue with any type of urethane finish, such as a wiping varnish or polyurethane, because they're going to be compatible with the wax. The one that causes the biggest concern is lacquer. I've used lacquer over it. I haven't found a problem. I haven't heard of anybody that had a problem. If you've experienced a problem using an abrasive paste and using lacquer and had a problem, please share it in the comments below. It's certainly not a problem with shellac or shellac-based finishes such as this Hut Crystal Coat friction polish that I use on small items like ornaments. Shellac goes over everything, and everything goes over shellac. That's the general rule. Let me share with you some of the conclusions that I came to as I went through this review of these products and examining the surface very closely. Number one, you've got to eliminate tool marks. Abrasive paste will not get rid of tool marks, so you got to get rid of your tool marks. Doing that by cutting as carefully as possible with the sharpest tool possible, whether you're doing a spindle where you might be able to finish the surface with a skew or a very sharpened spindle roughing gouge, to a bowl where you're doing your final pass in one continuous pass without interruptions that are going to leave lots of little ripples. Try to avoid that. Try to take one pass. You've got to sand very carefully. That's the most important thing. And you've got to sand to get rid of those radial scratches, the ones that go around in a circle because the piece of wood is going around in a circle as you hold a piece of abrasive to it. So for spindle work, that means sanding with the grain as well as while it's turning. You've got to stop the lathe and you've got to sand with the grain to get rid of some of those radial scratches.
Notice the prominent radial scratches on this piece of Bradford pear since I didn't sand with the grain. Very pronounced. Here's with a little better sanding. Light's a little bit different, taken at different times. Here's the same piece sanded with the grain with an abrasive paste, and it really cleans up nice.
This is a key item. If you're doing an item like a bowl, it's important that you get rid of those radial scratches that you might get by holding sandpaper by, number one, using a a electric or an inertial sander to get rid of some of the scratches, but it also helps when you finish with that to do a little random sanding by hand to get rid of scratches that might be in the wood from creating a pattern based on the wood moving on the lathe. The other conclusion I found that I don't think there are major differences in getting rid of minor scratches from any of these different abrasive pastes. I think the key here is, and I won't say that one is not better than the other, I just don't think it's significant in getting rid of minor scratches. I think the more significant issue is going to be which one is the most convenient for you to buy, which one is the most cost effective for you, whether you get it at a store or whether you're getting it from a website or from Amazon, or whether you're mixing it your own if you find that more convenient. Get the one that's most convenient and most cost effective for you. Some of the manufacturers suggest using sanding sealer first. What I found was I didn't find big differences between eliminating scratches in the final surface between using sanding sealer and not using sanding sealer. Your results may be different. If so, I'd appreciate your comments in below and share that with us. What it does do is having that sanding sealer, it can fill pores on end grain, and that may reduce blotching on using your final finish. That's certainly a possibility. But I would say for the work that I've done, I don't think it's worth the effort in most instances. I definitely believe that using an abrasive paste will help the finish on your product. It does get rid of minor scratches, but it also does some polishing and adds a certain luster. You still got to go over it with a finish. None of these abrasive pastes are a final finish.